Hey growers, what's up? My name's Lucas and welcome to my 2020 front yard vegetable garden. I got a lot of new things going on in my garden this year and I'm super excited to see what kind of results and what kind of harvests we're gonna get. Now this all started back in 2019 when I planted cover crop on my raised beds. This is a pretty boring topic to discuss, but basically what cover crop is it's some seeds that you plant. In my case, it was a mixture of a whole bunch of different kind of greens. When the winter comes and when the snow comes, this cover crop is going to prevent soil erosion. Also in the spring, I dug it into my raised beds to increase the nutrient levels and organic matter in my soil. So after I dug in the cover crop, I added a whole bunch of different soil amendments to improve the nutrition and quality of my raised bed soil, like bone meal, organic compost with mycorrhizae, sheep manure compost, sphagnum peat moss. So I added those things, mixed them all together in my raised beds, and then it was time to lay down the black plastic. So this year I decided to try a new technique, and that is using black plastic mulch. Now I purchased this at my local hardware store. It basically just comes in a sheet of plastic. This is pretty much like garbage bag plastic. It's not extremely durable, but it works really well. The thing about tomatoes and pepper plants is that they're warm season crops. So by using this black plastic, I managed to maintain heat levels in the soil, which will ultimately lead to a faster crop of tomatoes and also healthier plants. Another benefit to black plastic, besides keeping down the weeds, is that it prevents soil splash. So anytime you get rain or water that's splashing down onto the soil, it can potentially splash disease spores up onto your leaves. And this can cause your plant to get diseases such as powdery mildew and early blight, which will ultimately kill your tomato plants, or if not, severely reduce your harvests. First, I had to cut these corners out, as you can see, because these corner pieces are here in the way. I was trying to figure out how to install the plastic mulch, but after doing a bit of Googling online, I realized that there's not many instructions out there for installing it in raised beds. So I had to get a little crafty. What I figured out to actually tuck it in, because in order to make it nice and taut like this, you have to tuck it in the sides of the raised bed. What I used is this thin aluminum sheet. Take the sides and just push it down maybe like 6 to 8 inches and just tuck in the sides that way. And that worked really well for me. I was really impressed with how that turned out. So now we're in my garage because I want to show you my automatic irrigation system. This is something that I've wanted in my garden for a long time because I find it pretty painful to stand there and water every tomato plant by hand. It usually takes me about an hour to an hour and a half because I like to really soak the plants deeply so that they can really grow a nice strong root system. During the winter, I made the plans and I bought the supplies and I put it together. I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. Come on, I'll show you how it works. The irrigation system starts off here at the hose bib. So you got your hose bib, and then I have a timer here. Now this is going to basically allow me to program my system to go on whenever I want, and it's just super convenient. It makes the system automatic and hands-free. I'm really excited about this. The next piece of my irrigation system is this right here. Now this is a backflow preventer. It just prevents water from the irrigation system from getting back into the municipal water supply, so you don't contaminate it. And then next we got a filter here. Now this is really cool. It's a Y filter, so what you do is you can just twist this off here. Let's see if I can get this one hand. And water just came out because I had it running earlier today. This is just a little screen filter. You can pop it out like this, rinse it off. This is just to prevent little particles from getting in your system and clogging it up. And then next up we have the pressure regulator. This is to get your pressure down from the high pressure it is at your tap to a lower pressure that your emitter tubing can handle. This is 25 psi, so it gets it down to 25 pounds per square inch, and then it goes into this little elbow. It goes through this hole from the timer and comes across this little contraption. Basically this is just a support, have these clamps, and then it goes through this hole here, which goes through the brick, goes down into the ground, and you can't see it, but I had dug these big trenches here and laid the piping underground, and I used PVC around the poly tubing just to prevent the tubing from getting compressed. It comes up right here at my raised beds, so it comes into a valve here. So this is so that I can shut water off and on to this specific raised bed through this hole, through this tubing, down to the end. Throughout this mainline tubing is all these emitters here. Branches off to this spaghetti tubing, and it goes into these little emitters. See if I can get a closer view for you guys, but I'm going to show you how it runs in just a second. And then this is for the other raised bed. So same setup. You got the valve goes through a hole in the raised bed. But this one, since I have the plants staggered, I had to come up with kind of a different design. So instead of the tubing going right down the middle, I had to kind of weave them in and out of these plants here. That was a bit different, but it worked out. And then I have these branch lines coming off with the emitters coming to each plant. So now I'm just going to try to set this timer to go off in a minute, so that just to show you guys that it can be purely automatic and hands-free once you get it all set up. Another thing that's new about my garden this year is that I'm really focusing on support methods. To a lot of people, a cage of this height and robustness may seem very excessive, but the thing is, cherry tomato plants in particular can get super tall. They can get upwards of 8 to 12 feet tall, and last year I had some plants that got up to, I think, 9 or 10 feet. So I know for a fact that these sun gold plants are extremely tall, and I'm betting that I can get this plant to grow most, if not all the way up this cage. I'm going to be minimally pruning this plant, so basically the only things I'm probably going to be pruning off is any suckers that are badly placed or that are really weak, and I'm just going to let it grow and fill out this entire 10-foot tall cage. How I built this cage is I actually took two 5-foot tall concrete reinforcement wire cages that I built, and I basically just stacked them up. So stacked one another on top of each other, and I use these hooks and these end pieces to support one another, so this thing's not going anywhere. I also got some zip ties, and for added stability, I zip tie the cage to this 5-foot tall U-post. From my past gardens, I've found that beefsteak tomatoes typically don't get as tall as the cherry tomato varieties, so I think for this big beef tomato, this 5-foot tall concrete mesh cage should be more than enough. So this year, I'm going to be doing a trial. I'm growing some tomato plants minimally pruned in cages, and then I'm growing others single stemmed up a stake. So because they only sell these bamboo stakes in 6-foot lengths, what I figured out I could do is actually take a skinny bamboo stake and slip it in the top of this 6-foot stake, giving me a 9 or 10 feet tall stake, which is perfect for any indeterminate tomato variety out there. So that's just a little trick I discovered myself. Now, I don't know, maybe someone else discovered it before me, but I think I discovered it, so let's just leave it at that. So this here is a very expensive trellis that I built this year. It cost me like $60, no, more like 80. So anyway, I'm gonna be growing 2 tomato plants up this trellis. The variety is blueberry tomatoes, or blueberries tomatoes. This is a variety that my brother, who's currently holding the camera, wanted me to grow this year. It's a really interesting variety that I've never grown, so for all I know, it doesn't grow very well, but anyway, besides the point. This trellis is, I think, 10 feet tall, or 9 feet tall, something like that, and it's built out of a 4x8 sheet of concrete reinforcement wire mesh, and I got some conduit poles here that I cut to length, have some elbow connectors at the top. Basically, it's just a really nice trellis. It's visually appealing, it's great for any front yard garden, and I think it'll work really well. So these 2 blueberries tomatoes are going to be growing up this super tall trellis that I spent too much of my money on. Here you got these zip ties. They're just holding this trellis in place onto the electrical metallic tubing. And you might be wondering, okay, Lucas, so this thing is super tall, so how the heck is it not falling over? So I bought a 10-foot tall piece of rebar. I cut it in half, and then you can't see it obviously, but I pounded it into the ground on each side. I slid the conduit over top of it. Then for added stability, I used these EMT conduit 1/2-inch C-clamps. I screwed them into the end of my raised bed. So this thing's pretty solid. It's not going anywhere. And I put some washers under the conduit so that when these tomato plants get heavy and laden with fruit, the pipes won't sink into the ground because this washer increases the surface area. So I just cover that with some mulch, and you'd never know it was there. Oh shoot, guys, I just realized that I never really brought you through my garden and showed you what varieties I'm growing. So like I said, I'm growing tomatoes and peppers in my garden this year. This raised bed here is all tomatoes. So at the front here, I got 6 big beefsteak tomatoes. This is a hybrid variety. It's a nice, juicy red tomato. I'll put a pic up on the screen so you can see what this variety looks like. It grows great in my area, and it grows great in most areas because it's an easy grower. Now back here, I got 2 sun gold tomato plants. These are cherry tomatoes. They're orange. They grow up super tall, and most people say that they're the sweetest tasting tomato you can possibly grow. And I agree with that. That's this raised bed. Now this one over here, I've got peppers and some tomatoes. So here I got 4 bell pepper plants. These are all the X3R Red Knight bell pepper. These are all hybrids, which means that they're specifically bred to produce more fruit than the average heirloom variety. These 4 here in the middle are Sweet Sunrise, which is a nice yellow variety of bell pepper. Now these varieties are both new to me, so you'll be seeing how they grow along with me. And at the back here, like I mentioned earlier, blueberries tomatoes, cherry tomatoes. They are blue color, really nice. And over here I got 2 more sun gold plants. So these are both going to be single stemmed up these stakes, and it's going to look pretty cool. Then here is my little hot pepper zone. I got a hot pepper lantern habanero here. You can see there's just a lot of new growth coming on this plant. It's looking really nice, getting some flowers now. And then this plant right here is a Carolina Reaper, which used to be the world's hottest pepper. I don't think it still is, but it's still pretty dang hot. I got these cages for the peppers because from personal experience, I know that super hots tend to get bushy. They really bulk out as they get older. So I think this will provide some good support for them. Welcome to my potted pepper zone. Okay, so these are all super hot peppers. Carolina Reapers, boot jolokia or ghost pepper, hot pepper lantern habanero, basically just a whole assortment of hot peppers. Also got the hot chocolate habanero. Be making lots of hot sauce by the end of this season. I hope you enjoyed this tour of my 2020 vegetable garden. I live in the city, this is my front yard, and if you live in the city, you too can do this. It's something that I think a lot more people should be doing because it's just so cool to be growing your own food in your front yard or in your backyard. It really doesn't matter. If you're growing food on your property, I think that's pretty darn cool. I do it for the fun of it. I do it because I just like to see the plants pump out the fruit, pump out the vegetables, but it just has the added bonus of giving you fresh food that you can feed yourself and your family with. So thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions about gardening in general, feel free to leave those in the comments below. I'll be sure to check them out and either respond to you with another comment or a video. I'm out. Peace.